Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Cybersecurity is Not Rocket Science. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Mark Klein, who is Vice President here at NetSurian. Thank you, and here you go, Mark.
Thanks, David. So we'll walk through today's agenda. We're going to go through sort of today's threat landscape, as well as the basics of cybersecurity, some information about how criminals get in, how the hackers access data today, and then just some practical strategies to deploy some of what we call start somewhere approach. And then we'll wrap up for some questions and answers at the end, and then we'll give our contact information for anyone who wants to reach out afterwards as well. Let me give you a background on our company before we get started. So NetSurian Event Tracker. NetSurian is a managed security service provider. We've been in the managed security network compliance space for 20 plus years, and the last 10 or so focused on managed network security for a small to medium, even to enterprise level clients. Compliance, security, we adopted the Event Tracker endpoint protection as well. So we provide a SIM, managed SIM, as well as co-managed SIM through the Event Tracker platform as well. So what we've seen is just kind of a hole in cybersecurity is, when you boil it down, it's keeping data networks and computers safe, right? Unauthorized access or attacks, a blow to reputation or business, or, in some cases, jobs. We've seen a lot of breaches over the last 12 months that result in C-level executives moving on or moving out based on data stolen, number of records are stolen, or just public perception over the last 12 to 18 months. And what we're seeing is some statistics here, and we'll show you guys on the next slide sort of how the landscape is, what we call threatscape. Around 90% of organizations have had at least one malware-related incident. So if you think about that, 9 out of 10 organizations have had some type of malware embedded, linked to an email, or downloaded through the USB over the last year. So that's a high number, and we're seeing much more of that in the space and across all industries, whether it's restaurant, retail, manufacturing, healthcare, and whatnot. 80% of organizations had at least one threat caused by an insider. So always and continuous always will be the weakest link is the human element of security. So we see employee access, weak passwords, someone picking up a USB stick and plugging it into a workstation on the network, infecting the networks as well. And then 63% of organizations we have seen would have a ransomware incident, which we've seen in the news earlier this year. Quite frequently, we saw a bunch of ransomware hit hospitals in the UK. There was some government agencies as well. And we've seen it down to small merchant level as well, where small restaurants, mom and pop shops even, are getting their network systems locked down. An email approaches in their inbox asking for 20, 30 Bitcoins, or whatever the ransom is. Small municipalities, we saw a sheriff's station up in the Northeast get hit with this twice, as a matter of fact, and it came back to them and they had to pay up the ransom. So we're seeing a rash of that in the last 12 to 18 months or so. So let me get in the first quick topic on just, why cybersecurity, basic cybersecurity. So there's a quote from CEO of IBM that was from Forbes, is cybercrime is the greatest threat to every profession, industry, company in the world. So pretty powerful coming from a CEO of IBM. And what we've seen is that this is the new type of crime. You can read it on the news, you can hear it on CNN, and anytime you hear cybersecurity, it's always referred to as the new crime, right? And we're seeing it not only at the enterprise level, but all the way down to the small mom and pops and the small merchants as well. So, 50% of small businesses have experienced some type of cyber attack, 70% on small businesses, and 60% hacked go out of business. So these small enterprises, these small, medium-sized merchants in the space today, a lot of them do not recover from this. Not to mention the brand reputation of a brand associated with a breach or a incident that gets in the news, it gets in the water supply, and that brand name is not only affected nationwide or globally, but also affected in those regional towns and tri-state area of affection. So ransomware has been a big target we've seen, and it's predicted to exceed $5 billion this year. It's up from $325 million 2 years ago. It's a very, very large increase over the last 2 years. One, because the bad guys know that most organizations do not do well at backup. Backup solutions are sort of an afterthought, and they know that once they can control the systems, they have full control over the pocketbooks as well. Reason is they know that most organizations have pretty poor backup solutions, and they're not willing to put in the infrastructure to back up their data. And they infect a system. They'll be able to reach out to the organization and demand whatever they want from that organization in order to give their systems back. And in most cases, they either have to wipe their entire system and start from scratch, and hopefully they have the data backed up in some cloud application or data center. If not, a lot of times they have to pay it just to get up and running again. And that could be pretty detrimental depending on the business, right? You're out 3 days, you're out 5 days without your business, potentially out of business from that case. So what's the landscape today? You can see on the slide here sort of the past, current, and emerging. Over the last several years, going back 10, 12 years, we were in a state of sort of checkbox compliance mode where a lot of organizations, a lot of merchants were just going through PCI compliance, for example, or HIPAA, take any compliance, and checking the box, right? We call it checkbox compliance, just to get that passing grade for your compliance status, whatever it may be. And the state we're in today is sort of the evolution of detection and response, right? And also compliance management. We're using compliance standards as the framework for your security posture, whether it be PCI or FISMA, whatever it is, ISO 27701. You can use it as a framework to build on your security posture. And what we've seen is that a lot of organizations are taking it as a framework and starting, for example, PCI, then adding endpoint protection, backup solution, AV, updates to it. And they're driving towards that overall security posture, which is leading to what we see as sort of orchestration and threat prediction as well. So stopping the breach before it happens, identifying holes, gaps in the systems prior to a breach, and then education as well. We see a sort of advancement is constant education from the employees, how to handle sensitive data, protect it. Don't give out your password to a fake IT company, for example. So how do criminals get in? There's a lot of ways we've been seeing breaches over the last 12, 18 months. The statistics will tell you that a lot of it has to do with social engineering. And part of any breach kind of starts at the core, whether it's a employee downloading a funny cat video, or again picking up a USB stick and plugging into the network. A lot of times there's a human element, or a laptop is stolen. There's a piece or component to that is pretty prevalent for a lot of breaches we've seen. Once the reports come out and identification comes out from that, we do find that that's usually the root cause of a lot of this. There are some software components we've seen, outdated software, open patches, unpatched systems, weak passwords, and then we've seen a rash in just general security type holes as well. So old or outdated software running, AV not patched, as well as open system holes on the network, where attacker can find a root cause, do a social engineering hack where they reach out to an employee, find specific data about the network, the version, software running, whatever it may be, and then utilize that to their advantage. So they're gathering data from an employee or human that's going to aid them in their breach perspective, and kind of going about with their breach and hack as well. So Symantec came out with some stats I thought were pretty telling. 375 million unique instances of a malware found. I mean, that's over 1 million per day. It's a large number, and we see that increasing. I think last year we did a similar webinar, and it was around 800,000 per day. So that number keeps increasing. It's an easy way for the attackers to get into systems. 98 million botnets and 1.1 billion identities compromised through breaches. We've all seen the Equifax and so the impact that's had on, I think the last stat I saw was 1 in 3 Americans were impacted by that, and their data was stolen, their identity was stolen. So it's not, your typical hacker in a hoodie sitting outside in his car trying to hack the network, right? It's bots, it's malware, it's automatic system, it's low-hanging fruit. It's what can I get to? What systems can I breach? What access can I obtain with the least amount of effort possible? And that's what we've seen today, and we've seen over the last 2 years, is that it's the automatic breaches, it's the automatic systems where can I get in? Great, let me get in and see what I can do from there. Then that's when the damage starts. Once they can get in and understand that they have an open hole, that's when they start to get in and find out what data they can actually get to. So that first line defense, as we've seen, breached quite a bit through malware and other bots as well. So we'll talk through a couple, some strategies to talk through as well. So when we talk about first line defense, that's a couple things. So that's sort of your network security posture, whether you are in retail or restaurant, manufacturing, auto, whatever the industry is, it's sort of looking at your first line defense, right? And we usually start with user awareness and education. The weakest link is and always will be humans. And, we as a whole, susceptible to mistakes and open holes and clicking on things we shouldn't be from an employee perspective. So from the education perspective, we encourage a lot of our customers and organizations to have a security education framework, whether that be monthly, quarterly, annually. Anytime a new employee is onboarded, they go through a series of training courses, handling sensitive data, how to store it, how to touch it, how not to use it, and then just educate your employees, continuous employees, education on how to handle that data. We also encourage what we kind of call spot checks, to where your CISO or your CIO or whomever you have in the organization, director of IT or IT team, test the infrastructure, right? You're sending out a spoofed email address to see, we're the new IT company, please send us your password, click here. And then you can correct that behavior by educating the employees who did click on and provide the information that, we learned about this in our training course. This is why you don't do this. So our user awareness and education is kind of always the first step, and kind of creating that security posture as well. So a couple of questions we ask, or you should be asking for your vendors and your just general security personnel, is how do you train your people against current cyber threats, right? How do you prevent phishing attacks? Are you protecting against infected websites? How do you discover or remediate technical vulnerabilities on a monthly basis? How do you implement an IPS, IDS systems, right? So these are just 4 or 5 bullet points that you can kind of start somewhere, right? And just questions to ask the current architecture, current vendor you're working with, and just walk me through how this helps me. What are we doing today to stop these type of attacks, right? And generally, they may have a mixture of solutions to cover a couple of these bullets or one of these bullets. That's okay, as long as there's a piece of the pie here, and you can have an approach to at least some security framework. It's better than nothing. I mean, we use the approach of, let's start somewhere, and let's start with a vulnerability scan, or let's start with an antivirus, or let's start with a network firewall that's not purchased from Best Buy, right? Just to start somewhere approach to get the ball rolling and start that building that security posture. If you're starting from scratch, or you're starting and you're in the middle of it. These are all good questions that kind of sit back and ask at any point in your development of your security posture and stage, because they're all still prevalent today. And these are the 4 or 5 things that we deem are extremely important when you're developing your structure and your strategy to security. So I'll walk you guys through a little bit on the NetCherion side and how we kind of deploy our strategies. We do a multifaceted approach to sort of security, network resilience as well. We have next generation firewalls with constant management monitoring, rogue and critical device monitoring, Wi-Fi, secure remote access. We wrap that around with the compliance management portal as well, with data breach financial protection. We also do network resilience for 4G failover. We've been seeing a huge need for reliable backup solutions. So a lot of in our space, the PCI and POS terminals are moving to EMV, and they're searching for a reliable hardware solution to auto failover if the internet goes out or they don't have connectivity. They still need to process that credit card data or process that system, whatever it may be. We've had a huge need for auto connection, 4G cell failover. So we integrate that into our managed security platform. So our first line defense is a next-gen firewall. We couple it with a failover solution, wireless, as well as alert and monitoring. And then the PCI compliance management is sort of wrapped around that. We have a PCI compliance management portal where you can manage your PCI SAQ, external, internal vulnerability scans, your FIM logging requirement as well. And we talk about sort of security posture, and we've talked about compliance as a framework. I mean, the PCI compliance standard is a great set of requirements. That's a nice framework to build upon. Now, it's not the end all be all, and you can still be breached and be PCI compliant, but it is a nice framework to start on. You can build from that, and you can utilize that PCI management guidelines and requirements to kind of build your security framework from there. So in our PCI management portal, we sort of simplify the process. So kind of coupled around our managed services is the compliance management piece, where you can maintain your self-assessment questionnaire, your external and internal vulnerability scanning, FIM logging requirement, all wrapped into a portal-based solution that you can access anywhere, remotely, mobile, and keep up on your security scans, your vulnerability, your SAQ status, and any changes you make to the network. And we sort of take a holistic approach to security and compliance as a whole. We work with a lot of our customers to understand their needs, their kind of wants in their security posture, and then we'll sit down once a year and understand their roadmap to the new technologies added to their systems and how that's going to affect their management, their PCI status next year and the year after, where they may need to implement controls or compensating controls for new technologies, how that affects the network, as well as how does that impact their overall compliance status, and working with us to make changes on the network to configure, and whether it be Wi-Fi or online ordering or kiosk, whatever it may be, we work with the customer to kind of develop that status as well. One of the things is sort of simple management and visibility. We have portal-based solution to where our solutions you can manage and monitor sort of remotely. We have a portal-based solution where you can monitor your failover data usage, connectivity status. So let's say a firewall goes down, you want to ping and see if the ISP is out, or the firewall or POS, whatever it may be, you have that visibility into your network under a single user login, and it's mobile ready as well. Future integrations from support tickets and PCI compliance overview. You can sort of look at a location map for if you have thousands of locations with us, you can manage and monitor sort of the location map view, which locations are monitored, which ones may be down at the time. You can action that through the portal as well. So our SIM solution we've rolled out through Event Tracker, and what we've seen in the endpoint security piece is two things. It's one, securing the endpoints, and also visibility. We use a sort of a story told of, you have an employee that comes into the work one day and they're in the parking lot and they find a USB stick and they're an hourly employee. They're walking into work and go to the back office, plug in the USB stick, and it says Amazon receipt. The kid doesn't know any better, clicks on it, and then that quickly, malware or ransomware is installed in the network. So we've put a lot of security framework around the endpoint, protecting the endpoint, and showing how easy it is to get infected. And a lot of today's antivirus would allow a lot of the sophisticated malware and ransomware we're seeing. So we've put in sort of our SIM solution, and it gives you the opportunity to sort of process and manage all events from your endpoints, and analyze that behavior, correlation, also tracks communication as well. You can have real-time visibility, the ability to terminate in any process or IP address or any users or workstation at any time. And it also gets you the visibility aspect. So on a weekly basis, you can see every location across your fleet, and granular visibility to where this location, someone plugged in a CD-ROM drive at this time, or a USB stick, or whatever it may be. You can have that weekly report that's aggregated based on threats. So you can have your urgent, critical, and high locations listed on who's the culprits for the week or the month, or whatever reporting systems you would like. So it gives you that protection, but also gives that visibility at that end edge location. If you have multiple locations across the country or globally, it gives you that visibility as also that security piece as well. So kind of wrapping back to ransomware and breaches. So a couple steps that we've seen that can help prevent this is, a managed SIM or any type of SIM solution at the endpoint, just endpoint security in general. We've got a great webinar on why AV is not enough. And there's a 5-minute video on our website that kind of shows you why AV is not enough and why today's sophisticated malware and ransomware will get past a lot of the name brand AVs today. PCI. So PCI, again, is a great framework, PCI compliance, to build on your security posture. It's not the end-all be-all, but it's certainly, if you need to start somewhere, that is a great framework to start with and build from. Plan for ransomware, right? Find a solution that you can back up your network and have a backup ready, available if ransomware does happen. You have a backup plan for that, contingency plan. Make sure you do plan for that, and it's not a shock to you the one day you have to, pay a ransom to get your networks back. Train personnel. So going back to the education piece, as well as employee ongoing training, have a set schedule, whether it's quarterly or annually, whatever it is. It's a survey, it's a video, when you onboard new employees, whatever it is, just have something for your employees to understand that handling sensitive data, whether it's credit card or personal data, social, healthcare data, just in general. So you need to have that framework in place to be able to educate and show your employees that this is important and this is how you handle that data. And again, backup, regular backups. Can't stress it enough. It's overlooked quite a bit as a nice to have. A lot of organizations don't think that's a necessity, just how they view security. A lot of organizations we work with, we call it sort of post and pre-breach mentality. The pre-breach, if they haven't been breached before, the mentality is, I haven't been breached yet. I'm probably fine with what I have. And then post-breach is, okay, we've been breached. We never want to go through that again. What do we need to do, right? So that mentality is, unfortunately, kind of permeate through a lot of our organizations we work with. And unfortunately, if you haven't experienced that breach, you don't know how things operate post-breach. So these are a couple things you can kind of start from and kind of build from as well. and then 4 or 5 things that you can, if you need a framework, you're looking to build a security framework for your organization. These are 3 or 4 things you can start with to develop that. And it's not a one-time thing; it's an ongoing process. We have a lot of companies, a lot of customers we work with that are constantly tweaking their education, tweaking their network, adding pieces to the network is always a complexity. So it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. It's not like you fill out a questionnaire and your security posture is over for the other 11 months. No, you have to keep up on it, be diligent, and find new ways to challenge yourself and your employees and your organization to take security seriously, and understand that it is bound to happen in some aspect. There will be a time when you have a suspected breach or a potential breach, and you want to be able to prepare for that and have the framework and the policies and the plan in place for when that does happen.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. We do have a couple questions that have come in. We'll start with this one. If we wanted to get started, what would be the first step we should take? What is your suggestion for that, for security?
I would look at what type of business you have, and what data are you trying to protect, right? I mean, if you've done nothing and you have a physical location or a storefront, for example, I would say look at an enterprise grade firewall, run a vulnerability scan, just look at the PCI framework, as if you haven't been through PCI compliance before, would be my 2 or 3 things to start with. But you also kind of have to look at what data, what are you worried about? If this data got out to the outside world, how would it impact your business? And sort of work backward from there. And where is that data stored? Is it stored in your physical location, data center, filing cabinet? Where is that data stored? If it would get out, what's the impact? And sort of work backward from there. If it's an online, you're strictly e-commerce, then you would look at some development ways to route sensitive data away from your website. If it's a physical location, I would look at network firewall, enterprise firewall, and how to integrate that into your physical location.
All right, thank you. Another question here. I've talked with people about a SIM in the past, but all I've heard about that is just the tremendous amount of logs and data that's involved. How can a small business manage that?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. It certainly can, and SIM's not really plug and play type of offering. There is some tweaking to be done from the alerting function, and there's a couple. You can do a self-managed SIM. There's managed SIMs where companies will do it for you, where they'll correlate the logs, they'll alert you. You can put automatic alerts into the system as well. And they can terminate processes on your behalf based on your settings, right? So there's solutions out there that will correlate those logs and manually review those logs for you. One, to help you with the compliance requirement, but also security posture as well. But it can be, if you haven't done it before and you've purchased some type of software that is SIM-like or related, it can be overwhelming. You're going to get thousands and thousands of alerts for any change or function or log, whatever it is. It can be overwhelming. So you want to go with a company that, one's going to spend the time up front to help you kind of tweak that SIM and tailor it to your business. It's not a one size fit all type of service. You have to kind of find a company that's going to help you work through the installation and setup of that and the tweaking of it to where it takes a couple weeks to do that. So you want to find a company that can help you with that upfront process, and understand that that may take some time to kind of correlate that data in the logs to where it's going to fit your needs and how you want to be alerted and manage that SIM as well. So look for the companies that are going to provide you with that upfront service, and ask the questions that when you're talking to companies around SIM is, what do you do to help me configure this? How do I get this set up? Are you just going to sell me this software and never hear from me again? That's not what you want. You want someone's going to help guide you through that process.
Excellent. If you would like to ask a question, I've got one more here now. If you'd like to ask any questions, please enter them into the question box on the toolbar. So this one's about PCI compliance. I had a company that said that if we went with them, that would take care of all of our PCI compliance. It ended up not being true, that we weren't fully compliant, that we had other stuff we needed to do. Would Neturian be able to handle all of PCI compliance, or is there, or would we still need to do stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know of any company you can go to today that says, you sign up with me and pay me X, I'm going to make you fully PCI compliant. That's just not, not the case. At least I don't know of it. We're not that company as well. We help with a lot of the framework and help you with the tools to answer your self-assessment questionnaire, get through your QSA audit. We help you with and provide you with the tools to do that, but there's no one-stop shop here. I can't fly out to all my customers' locations and jiggle the lock on their filing cabinets, right? From a PCI compliance perspective, one, depends on sort of what merchant level you are, what type of SAQ or audit you're going through. But if you're going through an SAQ, there's a lot of self-attestation, questions you're going to have to answer as a business owner, and I can't help you with that. There's things that we can help with on the network security side and endpoint and scanning, vulnerability scan that we can certainly help you with, but it's, we can't do it all, and no company can. And any company that tells you that is just kind of feeding you bull, because there's a lot of things on the PCI compliance requirements that you have to do as a business owner or organization yourself. There's no one out there that's going to help you with those. There's a lot of self-checks, there's training, there's education, there's policy writing manuals that we as a security vendor, we do provide the tools and the framework for you to utilize those and use those tools to help your organization get compliant and work through the compliance status. But we're not the end all be all, and there's no company out there that's going to offer everything you need. And if they're telling you that, they're feeding you a line of bull. But there are a lot of companies that do consulting services out there that can help guide you through that. A lot of independent contractors out there that, if you just need a place to start and you want some help and guide you through that process, they're out there. But don't let them think that, or don't think that just because they say that, you sign up for my service, you'll be fully PCI compliant. It's not the case.
Once again, thank you to everybody for attending. Have a great day.